Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
And we are back at it again, lovely folks. We are back at discussing your favorite movies, the best romance in films, the best couples and thruples, the best action, the best maces, the best dragons in all of cinematography and all of film history. Because obviously, you guys are back listening to the Holy Moment Podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies with you and discuss the moments that work, the moments that don't, and the moments that reflect truth in unexpected ways. And I am your gosh darn host, Nathaniel Lirio, and I am joined by my beautiful brethren, Jeffrey, who is drinking water and chocolate milk at the same time, so that's pretty disgusting. But introduce yourself, Jeffrey.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Nichols. I'm drinking a mason jar of chocolate milk, and I'm trying to drink it very quickly because I just realized, right, I have a habit of just leaving my beverages out. And if I leave this out for the duration of this podcast and I haven't drank my milk, it's going to get really gross and lukewarm. And so I'm going to down it right now, right? Because I'm not that far from finishing.
Chug, chug, chug. Jeffrey, were you in choir?
I was in choir.
What did they tell you? So for all the folks at home that want to, yeah, we're a movie podcast. We're going to talk about choir for a minute. So I did choir all through middle school and all through high school. And they told us one thing and one thing only. Every time we were like, we had school, and that night we had like a what do you call it? Not audition, a rehearsal, performance. Anytime we had a performance, choir was always the last class of the day. And the teachers would always say one thing, Jeffrey. What would they say before the performance? That, like, you have a performance in a few hours. What did they tell you not to do?
Don't drink milk. It's going to coat your throat and make it hard for you to enunciate and sing.
And you're doing a podcast while drinking milk, you son of a bitch.
But that's why I'm chasing it with a nice cold glass of water.
What a crazy thing. Yeah, can't coat your throat if you drink water really fast. Science.
Yep.
Oh, well, very good. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us and putting up with our shenanigans, talking about milk and choir. But we're not here today to discuss, Jeffrey's memories of being a choir boy, because we're here to discuss something much more important. And that's apparently our favorite thing to talk about on this podcast, being
World War II.
You nailed it. Set up the ball and Jeffrey spiked it. I think this is our fourth World War II movie. We did Grave of the Fireflies, Come and See, A Beautiful Life, and now The Great Escape, directed by none other than John Sturges, something like that. He did, I think, The Magnificent Seven. He's a pretty famous guy. Old movie. I don't know why I keep picking World War II movies, because I think 3 of those were my picks.
Yeah, it's especially interesting because we watched Come and See 2 episodes ago, and to compare just how different they were, right? Tonally and perhaps thematically I don't know. Because The Great Escape ended up being a bit darker than I was anticipating. We open the scene and we have the very cheery, almost silly brass that lends the movie immediately a very lighthearted tone, right? In spite of the circumstances. But then by the end of it, and we can talk about the end later, but it ends on a very sober note. But just comparing Come and See with this movie, night and day. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because this is an American perspective versus the Soviet perspective as well.
Exactly. It was something I wanted to talk about. It's something that's it's so fascinating, seeing the difference in the movies you make depending on where you're at. I remember in British film history, we weren't in that class together, Jeffrey. I don't believe so. But our final paper was like a 10-page paper, something to do with British film history. And I talked a lot about how and why British movies and the themes are often different than American movies. And it heavily has to do with, I think, how society dictates their viewpoint of the people that live there. And so so that goes for every nation, every country who does movies does it with a different theme, through a different lens. And so it's just really interesting to talk about the Soviet Russia movie Come and See depiction of World War II versus the American depiction of World War II. And again, obviously the Soviet Union could have done a really more campy, happy-go-lucky-ish movie like this movie was. And America obviously has the ability to do a very dark version of World War II. But at the end of the day, I do think what a country has been through and how it's been shaped through war and through and through the hardship often dictates the themes that we see. So into it. But before I dive too much into it, I just want to talk a little bit about the movie as I normally do. The Great Escape. It's a World War II movie. based just like Come and See, they're both based on true events. This was based on basically the Nazis were like, gosh darn it, there are too many prisoners escaping. This sucks. So they put all those escapees in one camp. Also, guys, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the history of what this is based off of perfectly. Don't shoot me. But so they took all these like escape artists. You know, there were Americans, there were Australians, there were British, there were French people. And they put it all in one camp. And to quote the Nazi in charge of this camp, he's like, we're going to put all our eggs in one basket, which like that phrase is specifically saying don't put all your eggs in one basket, but whatever. So they put all these escape prisoners in one camp, and then the story goes. It's like one of the best escape stories where all these masterminds of escape get together and they're like, we're gonna try and get all 250 people out to raise hell in Germany and to like basically create another war front so the Nazis have more people they have to be fighting. And at the end of the day, they get 76 people out. Out of those 76, 73 were recaptured. So 3 escaped. And out of those 73 that were brought back, 50 were executed and 23 were reinstitutionalized back into the prison. And so this is the true story of those 76 prisoners escape.
And that's the thing that shocked me, right? Is that the Great Escape, viewed as an escape, was largely a failure. And I feel that I wasn't getting that impression at the beginning, right? You have all these highly competent people given these very specific roles, and it's set up almost like a heist movie, a highly entertaining one, because these people are executing their tasks with an efficiency that is so entertaining to watch. But then by the end of it, as you said, like upwards of 70 men are recaptured and 50 are killed. They still accomplish that goal of raising hell, though. And that's the big thing. Still sobering, still bittersweet.
It's an interesting moral conundrum because Roger, who is our kind of ringleader, he's known as the best escape artist. He's the one who is manning all the people and bringing them under one kind of flag. Like instead of like everyone trying to escape on their own or little groups of 2 or 3, he's like, no, instead, let's all work together and get as many people out at once. And he was the one that's like, it is our duty to continue the fight. And the way we can continue the fight is by raising all hell. But it's the question it brings up is, I looked it up. A majority of the people, because I think in the movie it only depicted like maybe 300-400 people in this camp. It was a huge camp. It was like a camp of like 5,000 in real life. So not all of them were escape, like people that are really good at escaping. But for the movie, they kind of consolidated. But in real life, out of the people that got brought back that were recaptured and weren't executed, a majority of them made it out alive after the war ended. So it's just an interesting idea of like if they didn't do that, arguably most of them would have lived. Basically, as the war was ending and how Germany had to retreat further into itself, they abandoned the camp and they made all of the prisoners march a really far distance in the dead of winter. So some people died of starvation and of the elements, but a majority of them made it, and then a majority of them were a few weeks later released. So it's just this interesting question of like, did they have this responsibility to keep fighting and to raise hell, or should they have just laid low and escaped, or not even escaped, but be let free? And so I just kind of feel bad for all the people that end up getting executed.
It is this interesting thing. When you view their mission as a mission to divert resources, right, away from the main lines of fighting, then they did somewhat succeed, right? This is a massive distraction that the Germans just had to deal with. I don't know. I feel that there is a sense of virtue, something admirable about the tenacity and the will of these people to fight against this oppressive force, even though it is in fact endangering their lives, and even though they were assured by the commandant of the camp that they would be treated well and made comfortable.
Yeah, and I guess because that's kind of the idea of like, can we buy your silence? If we treat you well, can we basically break your spirit? And I think even if, I guess it's a rallying thing for the Nazis to be like, look at all these guys that were escaping and causing us issues. We broke their spirit. And maybe it's even a thing to like the battle in the mind, you know, if they can show the people they're fighting against. Like, look, we captured your people and they're no longer escaping. We are truly that iron fist that they cannot escape. So I guess I do get kind of where the Germans are coming from, but also an interesting difference between this movie and Come and See was the depiction of the Nazis. In this movie, the Nazis are almost a little bit bumbling idiots and can almost be seen as sympathetic. But then in Come and See, they are ruthless. They are almost, Satan himself reincarnate. And again, both of these were depictions of true stories. Again, like, it's movies. There's going to be liberations with how they tell their story. But it's just interesting to see that again, within the same faction, you have people who are doing worse and more heinous things than others. And so I just thought that was interesting of how they depicted the actual Nazis.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that the Americans, how they viewed their participation in the war is they swooped in, they saved the day, right? They are the heroes of this conflict, right, against the evil empire. But they never faced any conflict on the home front, right? They weren't being bombed incessantly by the Nazis, and the Nazis weren't invading Kentucky, right? Whereas in Europe and in Asia, these are the battlegrounds that had to witness the horrors of war, right? And especially with Come and See, the writer was intimately aware of the atrocities committed by the Nazis because he witnessed them in his home, Belarus, where the movie takes place. And so his is a vision born from actual exposure to war, right? And is colored by the ugliness that he bore witness to. And then that more American mindset is, here is how we came in and saved the day. Here is how we proved ourselves honorable and righteous in the face of dark forces.
I guess that just makes me want to ask the question of like, I don't know a lot about like real war and like the do's and don'ts. I know like there's the Geneva Convention and there's some type of honor, quote unquote, in war. I never understand prisoners of war. I'm happy that they exist, I guess, to some degree, because that means they have a chance of escaping or being liberated instead of just being killed. But when you have something like Come and See, when they're going into Belarus and committing mass genocide against civilians, people who have done nothing wrong, arguably. But then when it comes to prisoners of war, these are like another part of the movie. These were all high-ranking people in the military, high-ranking British officers, high-ranking American officers. I'm just like, why didn't they just kill them? Like, what's the point of keeping them alive? If they are so heinous as we say, is it because like, were they racist against the Belarus people? Were they like also like, because I guess I remember in Come and See, they were kind of talking to them how, they talked to the Germans like, hey, you're no good. Like, why would we even care if we're burning you alive? You're not actual people. But did they have a certain, I don't want to say respect, but a certain reverence for like, oh, these other troops of like countries we actually don't think are horrible, despicable people. I guess we'll keep them alive as prisoners.
Yeah, so these soldiers were often used as bargaining chips, right? And so if they had people that were prisoners of war on the enemy side, like if the Americans had some high-ranking German officers, perhaps exchanges could be made. Like you think about organizations that are keeping hostages like now, like with Israel, Gaza, that whole controversy, that whole conflict. A part of it is that Hamas has hostages, and Israel is using that pretense to continue their assault on Gaza, and various attempts have been made to negotiate their release, right? And so as long as they have those hostages, they have some leverage.
That makes sense. And I guess if these movies weren't based on true stories, I wouldn't bat an eye. But the fact that they are, and they're so starkly different how they treated the lives of humans, that made me ask that question. And that makes a lot of sense. Like the fact that they're used for bartering. And guess what? This podcast just went from an entertainment category to the education category. That's right. We're teaching you about history. You're welcome. But I know you guys probably came here to talk about a movie rather than history. So, Jeffrey, my first question for you is just a little bit of setting up. This movie has a big cast. There's a lot of characters. Again, they're trying to get 250 people to escape. And so we open up with all of the people being delivered to this prison. It's fresh, it's new. They kind of explain the whole gimmick. I love how much exposition there is, and also how it's just like the Nazis in charge are calling in the like British officers, and it's like, we're going to tell you exactly why you're here and what we're doing about it. And I thought it was really funny how just transparent they are with them, and how much they're just allowed to keep their clothes and their cigarettes and their books and their baseballs and their gloves, and just like, yeah, it's fine, let them all in with their stuff.
Yeah.
Who cares?
And I love
Very
how
surprised by that.
I love how transparent the British officer is with the Nazi officers. He's like, yeah, I mean, like, we're gonna try to escape. It is our duty to escape. He's like, you'd better not try that. And the British officer's like, can you blame us?
Yeah, it took me a while to like. I thought they were on the same side because again, everyone like no one's dressed poorly. You can't tell who the prisoners are by how they're dressed and how they're talking to each other. Like they salute. Like all of the prisoners are always saluting the Nazis, and the Nazis are always saluting them, and they call them sir and stuff. So there's this really weird dichotomy that's going on. But the point of the story is, all the prisoners show up, and like I said earlier, Roger, who is a British naval officer, not naval, Roger, who is like a British commander, everyone respects him. He's like, this guy's done the most escapes, the most successful. So he is the one with the help of Captain Ramsey, who has a bad leg. They're both like British officers, and they kind of come together. So Ramsey and Roger are like, hey, you know what? Instead of all us trying to escape on our own, let's come together and do one big escape. So you have Roger. He's kind of a main character. Then you have Steve McQueen. Nope. Is that right? Steve McQueen? Yeah, Steve McQueen. When I said that, I just thought of Lightning McQueen, and I was like, that's not a real person. It's Steve McQueen. Like the actor. Steve McQueen plays the American hotshot Captain Virgil Hiltz. So he's another main character, but he takes his own approach for most of the movie. Him and one other guy are trying to escape together. And so they're kind of forming their own faction. So he's another main character. And then I would say the last personal main character, in my opinion, would be Bob Hindley, who is part of Roger's organization, and he's the forager. So he gets the crew what they need. If you need a pickaxe, if you need a camera, if you need a Playboy magazine, I'm going to get it for you. Don't you worry. But he takes a very front and center portion of the movie. So out of those three characters, whose story did you enjoy watching the most?
Mm. Well, first I want to say that this movie didn't have an ounce of fat on it, right? Despite it being 3 hours long, right? The movie begins and immediately it just tells you what's happening. And so, and there's a lot of characters to get to. So I'm glad it did that. As far as which story I enjoyed the most, man, I thought that Henley's relationship with Colin, the man that went blind, was very endearing, and it's very tragic when Colin was so brazenly shot down on the hillside, and Henley's looking down on him with his face covered in blood. Bright red. Was this in Technicolor?
Probably, I would assume so. This was shot in 1963, I think. So that would make sense.
Yeah. I haven't seen a movie that this wasn't a bloody movie at all, but I feel like that's the most blood I've seen in a Technicolor film.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could be wrong. It might not be Technicolor.
Yeah. But no, I really enjoyed their dynamic. I feel like one thing I thought was very interesting. Danny the Tunnel King,
Oh yeah.
right? He's dug 17 tunnels. That is his shtick. That is his thing. That's what he's known for. But he's deathly afraid of tight spaces and caves and tunnels, and that's something that we discovered about midway through the film. And up to that point, all we know him for is that's his area of competency, is he digs tunnels. And then watching him become slowly overwhelmed and overcome by this fear, right? That no one had previously seen because he'd kept it hidden, right? He would just push through that fear. That was a compelling story to follow.
Danny was easily my favorite character to watch for all the reasons you just said. Like, I love you have all of these masterminds planning these elaborate escapes, but at the end of the day, they get to just do the talk. They get to command people around. Danny is underneath the earth, 30 feet, digging a trench, constantly dirt falling on him, covered in sweat. He was the most badass. He was so cool. And he plays it off so cool till like at the very end of the movie where we find out he's terrified of being in there and he has a mental breakdown. And the fact that he's one of the three to escape made me so happy. It's actually a little different in real life. So Danny's character is a real person who had a background in mining in real life. Like his job was mining, so that's why when he got captured and went to war, he was so good at escaping because he understood how to mine in the infrastructure of dirt. But actually, a week before this escape happened, he got transferred to a different jail, and that more than likely saved his life because he did end up getting released after the war ended. But if he had gone through with the escape, he more than likely would have ended up being one of the 50 that was executed. But in the movie, Danny escaped and he made it out, and he was so fun to watch. I really really enjoyed his character.
I also really enjoyed Bartlett. Is that Roger? Roger Bartlett? Is that his full name?
Yeah, I think so. Yep, yeah. The guy who's in charge of everything, the one that was the commander. I really Roger was the second favorite. Probably, I think I liked Roger's story overall more than Hendley's, the Americans with Colin the blind guy. I think Hendley's was more endearing and more nuanced. But I think something was it was so fun to just watch Roger command all these men and just be like, he's like your favorite mastermind, like to watch and root for. You really root for him.
Yeah, like he's the brains behind this operation, and it's just fun to watch a genius at work at times. No, it's like everyone was operating with utmost efficiency. Like every cog in the machine was well oiled, and then they all died.
Oh.
Yep.
And you want to know the weirdest thing about them all dying?
What?
You know how earlier like it ended up kind of being a dark movie. And yeah, it's a dark movie. They execute them. Again, they don't show it, so it's not really visceral. They play really fun orchestral music over the deaths. It wasn't epic. It wasn't sad orchestra. It was like, oh, ba, 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 yeah, ba. It was happy. It was just like happy orchestra music while they were being shot down. And it was really weird. And it wasn't like, oh, this is a cool juxtaposition directing thing, commentary. It was just like it just was like, in my opinion, it seemed like that was the music for the time period. Like that's just what they would do. If you like grew up in the 60s, that's the type of music you heard. And this is me assuming, I don't know for sure. But it just seemed like the thing to do instead of, being creative and doing something different with your music to maybe depict something horrible as happening. I just thought it was so weird when people were getting shot down and it was just like very happy music, like very like a big orchestra was playing it, and it just was weird.
It was. Here's something that I found kind of interesting. It was kind of satisfying, but it felt incongruous, right? As you're suggesting, how the movie begins and Hilt is immediately sent to the cooler, and at the very end of the movie, he's sent to the cooler. There's the little prison. It's like a full circle moment, and it's playing that cheerful music, and that's the note that we end on. But not like 3 minutes prior, like people were dying and people were mourning the 50 that had given up their lives, not for nothing, but certainly not for their freedom.
Yeah. And that's why I think, in my opinion, I didn't like that. It felt like a movie that was dated by the time period. Like, I think it was well acted, well constructed. I thought it was beautiful cinematography. All in all, I like this movie. But I think a critique I had is, again, I don't know a lot of movies from the 1960s, which one of the reasons doing the podcast, watching more movies I don't normally watch. I'm finding out I like older movies, but it just felt like it was forced to be this like American classic. The Americans are great. Everything's going to be good. Everything's going to be happy at the end of the day. Even though it wasn't, it's still, like you said, it ended on this weirdly happy moment. The deaths were kind of not taken super seriously to some degree. There was a few poignant moments that were sad, but overall, I just feel like it had to stick with its American sheen and glamour and epicness. And that I feel like undercut the deaths and the sad tragicness of it all. And again, I think that's an issue with the time period for how movies were in America. I think if this was made again, 100% you would dive into a darker tone to reflect what happened. But I just think movies in the 1960s like that didn't always dive and walk the thread of this epic American tale with this very dark underbelly. So instead it was a little more surface level, flat toned.
That's fair. But here's what I'll say to that as well. I think that it had that like 60s movie. It felt dated, but I felt that a part of that datedness lent the movie a charm, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Just with how quippy they are with each other, right? In spite of the circumstances, it felt that all of the characters had like great chemistry with one another, even as big as this ensemble was. Yeah, it's just like hearing people talk in that way, and hearing dialogue written in such a manner that felt so distinctly of an era.
That's what I love about film. There's no one way to do a movie correctly. And the cool thing is, films are often time capsules of what society was going through, what was the values, what were the themes, and then also to take one country's themes and then look again at Soviet Union, come and see how dark and gritty it was. So there's no one right way to do a war movie. And I'm just saying, for me, I think I'm going to be a little less personally invested, as if instead of if they didn't like dive into like the darker tones. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean that the director did a bad job. And I do agree. Charming is a great word. It is charming how happy and how just smooth everything goes. Even as you're watching their demise, it still kind of feels good in a really weird way. You know what this reminded me of, which is horrible because I actually haven't seen this movie all the way through. And I also haven't seen it since I was like 8. So correct me if I'm wrong. I watched this movie and I was like, this seems like The Sound of Music. This seems correct to what The Sound of Music would be like. I don't know if that's right at all.
I think it has a similar feel, and I think they came out at around the same time. What year did this movie come out?
63, I believe. I
It
could be wrong, though.
might have even been the same year. Let me look that up.
Isn't The Sound of Music a World War II movie as well?
Yeah. Oh, it takes place at around that time.
We need to put a ban. No more World War II movies after this. Oh, World War I movie, that's fine.
Hold on. Wait a minute. It just hit me. You haven't seen The Sound of Music all the way through?
I think I've like not even. I think I've seen like a clip or two as an 8-year-old. I haven't even seen a majority of it.
Oh man, we gotta watch that together. I love that movie. It's a great movie. It's a great musical.
A lot of my film friends, it's some of their favorite movies, so I'm sure it's great. Put it on the list next season, come 2026.
I will. Man, I'm kind of kicking myself for not putting it on this list, but musical. We can do a musical category.
Yeah, we've thrown around the idea of musical categories, haven't picked it yet, so I'd be down.
The movie The Sound of Music came out in 1965, so that was 2 years later.
Okay, yeah. I would watch. I know it's a lot of people's favorites, and I do want to watch it. But back to this movie at hand, this World War II movie. Like Jeffrey said, this movie, a big chunk of it is like they save all of the because okay, you're in a prison, World War II, you're trying to escape. The whole point is the tension. They're trying to escape. Are they going to get caught? Oh no, oh no, oh no. Like, basically, there's no showing the Nazis catching on to them until we get to the antithesis, the most tense scene I've almost ever watched, them getting caught, which we'll talk about later. But for a big chunk of the movie, like an hour and 40 minutes, it is just them showing how thorough, how detail orientated, how much, like you said, every single person has a thing they need to do, whether it's as simple as singing a little whistle when a Nazi officer walks around the corner, to like singing Christmas music so they can't hear them like hammering the pipes. And so it was no tension in a fun way. I'm happy that it wasn't like, oh no, when are they gonna get caught? It was literally just like an hour and 40-minute montage of them showing how badass they were at like digging tunnels, which was awesome. This movie could have been called Tunnels. So my question for you is, out of the multiple facets and details of the escape, what was the most interesting to see? What was like the most interesting to watch them? Like, oh, that's how they did that.
Oh man.
Because they sorry, not to interrupt, but at the very beginning of the movie, they have like a little description box, and it was like, some of the names have been changed, some of the people have been a conglomerate story of multiple prisoners, but all of the actions that they did to escape, verbatim.
Man, goodness, there's just so much to appreciate, right? The whole keeping the soil in their trouser sleeves and letting it loose over the garden, right? To disguise that it's a different type of soil. Henley sort of building a rapport with that guard, stupid young guard.
Yeah. He's so dumb.
Yeah. And basically making him be like an errand boy for him. Hey, like, get me that camera, man. You don't want to be sent to the Russian front, do you? Okay, other clever things. I think the stove, it was a very clever idea. It's a shame it didn't work out in the end, right? And like, those aren't things that you can help. He drops his coffee And it's not like they're even looking for it. But I mean, this had nothing to do with the escape, but I'd like that they made moonshine.
Yeah, yeah. So it was also because it was a whole plot point that there were only two American officers in the entire army or in the entire prison, and that's Hindley, who was the forager, and then that was Hiltz, who was the cooler, the guy that keeps getting thrown into isolation. And so there are only two, but Hiltz gets an Irish guy to help him make vodka. And then he gets everyone in the camp to celebrate 4th of July. And they're mostly British officers. So it was really funny watching Hiltz lead this, like, yeah, drink my vodka to celebrate 4th of July, even though you're all British. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, here is a trick that wasn't directly related to the escape, but I think it led to a moment that was surprisingly poignant because we see that Colin is losing his sight. And we see him in his room. And we're not sure exactly what he's doing, but he's counting his steps, right? And picking something off of the ground and placing it back there, right? He's going back to the door and he's counting his steps again. 5 steps. He looks down, picks up the pin, sets it down again. And we're like, what's he doing? Later, Roger meets Colin and Henley in their room, and he says, listen, Colin, we know that you're losing your sight. You cannot come with us. You are a liability. And in that moment, Colin's like, no, I can see just fine. Watch. And then he walks the 5 steps. He picks up that pin that he's planted, and he gives it to Roger. Great use of setup and payoff there. And it's heartbreaking to think that he was expecting that moment. He was expecting that rejection. And so he had a whole thing planned out, but of course it wasn't enough because all Roger had to do is kick his foot out and he'd trip. And then of course Henley promises to be his guardian, right? And lead him safely out of the camp. But yeah, that was an interesting little scheme, if you can call it that.
It's also a great scene because Roger, the leader, again, he is somewhat nuanced because he could just be this brilliant mastermind leader that's barking orders. But in that scene, you really get a little bit of his nuanced character because it's Roger, Collins, the blind guy, and then Henley, the American forager. And Henley and Collins have made a friendship at this point. And Roger comes in the night before they're going to escape, says, you can't come with us. And Henley calls Roger out on his BS, and he's like, you know what? That's dumb. I don't disagree that a blind man could jeopardize the mission. But also, the Gestapo, like, you are the most wanted person. You don't think they know what your face looks like? You're being just as selfish going on this mission. You have loved ones you want to see. And then we kind of get Roger, not break down, but he kind of lets you peeks behind the curtain. He's like, you're absolutely right. I am being a little bit selfish and wanting to go. I have family. I have loved ones. And so he admits it. He's like, yeah, I'm being selfish and I'm going to go. And I think that's also part of the reason why he lets Collins go. You know, Henley does say, hey, I'll take care of Collins. But I don't think if he got called out on his BS, he kind of had to be like, okay, you're right. He can go, I guess. But what a hard decision to have to make, you know, like who gets to go and who doesn't. And I bet some prisoners wanted to stay. I bet some prisoners knew, like, hey, the war, like when we got captured, the war's kind of wrapping up. Like we're gonna get out of here alive. If we try to escape, we might be killed. But I'm sure that's a heavy burden on Roger's shoulders. Like who gets to escape and who doesn't. That'd be really stressful.
Yeah, the responsibilities of an officer towards the people under him. There are a lot of rules and a lot of protocols that have to be followed. And you have to make decisions that are consequential. I know there's one rule of if you are an officer and you are in a prisoner of war camp, right? You have to let your soldiers under you eat before you do. Officers are supposed to eat last. And it's to hammer home the point that you are not an officer to lord your power over others, right? You are an officer to, I guess, serve your men, right?
I also could see it being like a level of control, not control in a bad way, but to be like, yes, we have been captured. Yes, we were behind enemy lines, but we are still part of our country and we are still part of the service and we are going to maintain the order to kind of like, I feel like it almost help with morale. Like, oh, we got captured. Look at our colonel, our general that we respected. Now he's just in a corner, slumped down. It's like, no, I'm still a cap. Like these men in this prison still had so much respect for Roger. And there was a very clear hierarchy. You think you could throw into prison, it's like F you, every man for himself. But there's a hierarchy and you respect them and you follow that hierarchy. And that was also really cool to watch. No one complained about their role. Some of them, like Danny, were underneath the dirt digging. Some of them, like what was this? He had a really cool name. He had a mustache, and he was the one that led the choir singing Christmas musics.
Cavendish?
Cavendish, yeah, what a cool name. Also, it fit. We have a cool, like, you look French, blonde hair, nice mustache. You name Cavendish, awesome. Real shame he got killed. He was part of the 50 that was executed.
Yeah.
But all in all, like the first like half of the movie was so fun to watch. Like not a lot of tension, just dudes being dudes, digging tunnels, ripping apart wood, facing the Nazi regime. Don't we all want to do that? But then we get in my opinion, one of the most tension-filled scenes I've ever seen. It was awesome. So, to give you a little bit of description, the night before I watched this movie, I watched the new movie, The Lost Bus with Matthew McConaughey. And everyone's raving about, like, I was on the edge of my seat the entire movie. It's another movie based on a real story where basically a bus driver has a bunch of kids and there's a California wildflower fire about to burn them all alive. So it's a really stressful movie. And then the night after that, last night, I watched One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, another very thriller, edge of your seat movie. None of them had any scenes that compared to this scene I'm about to talk about. So it's the night of the escape. It's a hustle and bustle. The tension can be cut with a knife. It's not 10, 20, 30. It's 250 guys that are trying to get escape. You can't do that in 10, 20 minutes. That's going to take hours to get everyone through this tight tunnel. And again, the precision. They were so detailed orientated because, again, imagine this camp. There's a bunch of like buildings with people in it, but they dug the one tunnel in one of the buildings, so they had to have all the men go into that building slowly. They had someone in there with a clipboard. Where did they get that clipboard? Not important. They were so organized. They were having everyone come in, tell their name, and they would check them off the clipboard. Like, okay, you're in this order to go down the tunnel. Go sit on this bed. They were so organized. They had someone sitting above the tunnel to take your briefcase so you could get into the tunnel, and then they would hand you the briefcase. So again, just so meticulous. But it's just 250 people through this one tunnel. And Danny breaks. He's in the tunnel. He's going to be the first one out because he dug it. But he freaks out and he runs out of the tunnel. And Roger is like, we need to get our shit together. We need to go. So they get to the end of the... Also, I love the set. It was just this little hole of 30 feet underground. And they're just in this little cavern and they dig up. It's Roger and Hilt, the American. And they get out and they realize they're 20 feet short of the tree line. So they're pretty much out in the open. And they're like, well, what do? We have to go tonight. And so you have this scene where Hilt's like, okay, give me some rope. I'm going to get out, run to the edge of the tree line. I'll drop you the rope. And every time the guard passes, I'll tug on it so you can go. And so now you have to painstakingly watch something that should maybe take an hour or two is going to take the whole night. Because, the soldier has to pass and they has to tug on the line. Then one person has to get up and run 20 feet, dive into the trees. And so we have this scene for probably 5-10 minutes. We watch one guy and the next guy and the next guy. And even if you didn't, like, I knew going into the movie, because I had heard about this story. So I knew how they didn't escape, how they got killed. So I knew what was going to happen. But imagine like not knowing and being like, not all 250 people are going to escape. Who's going to be the dumb piece of garbage that messes it up? And so I just was holding my breath. And unfortunately, one of the guys trips and falls on his briefcase and alerts the guards. And they that's how only 76 got out. But that scene, I was on the edge of my seat. How was it for you, Jeffrey? Did you feel that tension, or were you like, no?
No, I think it was very effective at creating tension, them peeking their head out, and then it's clearly not where it ought to be. And with each person that came out, my thought was, which one is it going to be? What is this the moment? Is this the moment? Like, there's a brief moment where a guard thinks he sees something, and then I think he ignores it. And so, high stakes, high tension moment. And I actually didn't know the ending of this movie. And so I had no idea how many, if any, would escape. I was assuming some would escape. I was actually assuming a greater number would escape, just because that's what the brassy, upbeat music at the beginning of the movie had led me to believe. Is this is the kind of movie where there is a large success, a large victory at the end, right? A triumph of good over evil. And that's what made the ending all the more shocking for me. And that's something that I appreciated. I think I appreciated it more not expecting it.
Yeah. I could bet there. I bet I could imagine there being more tension not knowing. I think for me, it was just like, okay, the goal's 250. Are we going to get 20 out? 30, 40? How many are going to get out? And when they said 76, I was like, okay, that's a good amount. 76, that's solid. That's like a third. That's some pretty decent numbers. So yeah, to me, it was just like, how many of these 250 can we get out? And just I think I don't think I have claustrophobia, but just something about being underground, watching them in these tunnels, skirt through in these little scooters, just fill me with so much like anxiety of like, oh my gosh, get out, get out, get out, run, run, run. And I loved watching that scene. It was so fun.
The movie does a great job of making you feel Danny's fear of tight spaces with the cinematography, how the camera sort of looks at the tunnel and all of its crookedness, I suppose, the wooden beams. It feels tight and uninviting.
And it doesn't help that I think two different scenes we watch him almost get buried alive. And he did a great physical acting of like freaking out, tearing out of the soil and trying to get out and trying to breathe and drink water. And so like, yeah, you definitely you fear the tunnels, even though they're cool, you fear them. There's fear in those tunnels. But they do. 76 people escape, and that leads us into the final act. I was so surprised. I just was convinced it's The Great Escape. I thought after they got out, we were going to wrap it up. But then I saw there was an hour and 10 minutes left. And I was like, oh, I guess we do have to show them now continuing to escape. But I was convinced. I thought that was the climax because it was so tension. So like again, the movie was kind of fun and campy up to this point, but this point was like dreadful and so scary. So I really thought this was the climax. And the fact there was an hour left, I was like, okay, what's going to happen? So for the next hour, we watch the 76 people, our main cast, take different routes throughout Germany trying to escape. Who was your favorite person to follow?
Well, I think that watching Roger Bartlett was very entertaining because he nearly escaped, right? If only he had been less of a public figure, right? Less a known danger, right? Because he spoke fluent German, he spoke fluent French. When he was talking to the Nazi soldiers, right? And he led them off his trail, right? I was thinking, hell yeah, Bartlett, speak that German, right? And he's like, Englander? You think I'm an Englander? Silly Germans. And like, sorry, buddy, we'll leave you by yourself, right? And then he's intercepted. But I will tell you, my favorite moment in this third and final act, was when the three Nazi soldiers are stopping by that outdoor cafe.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my favorite moment, but it was a very entertaining moment. They're served by the waiter, right? And we've got the American sitting by himself with the newspaper covering himself. The waiter suggests to him, hey, like, you've got a phone call, sir. They motion him over. And then they get under the table. And he takes his cue from them. He gets under the table. A car drives up. And they just machine gun those officers, right?
Yeah.
And the two waiters clink glasses and take a swig. That was so satisfying.
I mean, that's what was so fun about this third act was watching them all escape in such different ways. And again, some of them, Hiltz, which I'll talk about in a minute, the motorcycle. Apparently, that was completely fiction. But that scene, the resistance, he was actually Australian. The Australian was one of the three to escape. He was an Australian officer, and he found his way into France and found the France resistance, and they smuggled him into Spain. And so that actually did happen. But it's just so funny watching everyone go through different antics of trying to escape. And the France guy, he was the one, or sorry, the Australian guy, he was the one that stole a bicycle. And again, this lovely music with this lovely cinematography of the hills of Germany and just watching him bike down the German roads and then cut to like all of his friends being gunned down and shot. It was so funny. I don't know if it was my favorite, but I really enjoyed watching Hiltz. Our main Steve McQueen American guy, he steals a motorcycle and he's riding around on a motorcycle out chasing the Germans, and he gets to the Switzerland border. But it has this huge wood and barbed wire fence. And there's two. So there's one, and then there's about like 10 feet of like grass, and then there's another one. And so he's driving on his motorcycle all cool, and he jumps the first one. And so now he's in like no man's land. He's right between the border. He just has to jump one more to make it. but he ends up getting shot and falls into the barbed wire. And so that was very dramatic and fun to watch. I enjoyed that. But I think my favorite to watch was also either Danny's was very boring, but I was rude. I wanted Danny to live so desperately. So the fact that he got on the boat and rowed away and survived, I was so happy. But I agree with you. I think Roger was the most interesting because Roger was the most stressful to watch because he was almost got caught in the train and then they had to escape the train and then they're going to get on the bus. But then the other guy with him actually spoke English and then he was running down the street. So I think his was just the most realistic and had the most stress watching, trying to escape.
And then there was Henley and Collins as well.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
theirs was really good too.
theirs was very good, especially Collins' death scene.
Because they steal a whole freaking airplane, and they're in an airplane. Of course they're going to escape. And then I don't know how true this one was, but the airplane had issues, and they crash landed, and they get recaptured, and Collins gets shot. So that's the real theme of the movie. Don't become blind, and you won't be shot by a Nazi. So, to all our blind listeners,
Like, if the movie had ended with them escaping the camp, right? That would have been an entertaining movie, right? I would have still enjoyed the movie a great deal. But watching these people be systematically like recaptured, most of them one by one, is what gave it an added layer of complexity that I really enjoyed.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't know why or how I thought it would have ended after they escaped the initial prison, but I was convinced it would. But then it made so much sense that you needed that third act, and it was great. It also was so different because we spent the first 2 hours in the prison. I loved the set; it felt so real. But ultimately, we're just in the same two rooms the entire first 2 hours, and then it's like again you're in prison. It's like the world opened up, and you're this beautiful countryside of Germany. So it was really really different, a different vibe of. So it just felt like a different movie in a good way. So I really enjoyed watching that.
It's very pretty. Yeah.
Well, hey, I think we discussed all three acts of the movie, and now the most important question that everyone's waiting for, Jeffrey. What is your holy moment of The Great Escape?
My holy moment would have to be there's just a lot that I appreciated about this movie. It's not my favorite movie, but I really enjoyed it. And so I think that I like that The Great Escape could, from a certain lens, be viewed as a failure. And the fact that they showed this right on screen, that it hadn't ended with the prisoners escaping the camp, that was the point, is that most of these people were recaptured and most of them were killed. It's just a really cool story to have been told. And so I would say my holy moment is not so much a moment, but yeah, just their willingness to tell a sobering story that takes people off guard, right, who aren't expecting it.
It definitely, and at the end of the day, I liked Come and See more. I think Come and See was a more powerful depiction of World War II. I think it was better done. But I do like that with this movie, they didn't shy away from the deaths of the men and the fact that the genre or the tone of the movie made it feel ever so, it caught you off guard. Because again, it feels like an American movie. It feels like they're invincible. It feels like the type of movie where they would rewrite the ending and most people escaped. But then when they do execute all 50, it does like, whoa, I was not expecting that. So yeah, that totally makes sense.
Who's Roger with when they die? Like it's Roger and it's
I know Cavendish is there, and it's his. It's not the guy with the limp I talked about at the beginning of the movie. It's another person who's seen throughout the movie frequently, but I don't remember his name.
But I like how they step outside the vehicle to stretch their legs, right? And they're killed mid-conversation, right? The side of the machine gun literally stops them in their tracks, and they are gunned down. And that's an example of how it catches you off guard, and it feels so abrupt but appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this again. Me knowing the ending, it was like the most obvious thing. Did you Did you think they were going to kill all of them? And that like, hey guys, just it's going to be a long drive. We feel bad for you. We're nice Nazis. You can go stretch your legs. Well, at that point, did you know? Oh, they're about to mass murder all these people, or did the tone make you not think that?
There was a great sense of foreboding, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely had a thought that could happen, but I think that it did take me a little off guard just how abrupt it was, right? That it was mid-conversation. I was thinking they'd have their last words, right? Where Roger sort of spits in their faces and courageously faces the machine gun fire. But I liked this better.
And not only middle of sentence, if I remember correctly, it was the general like, "Ah, shucks, I guess we got caught. I wonder what our next plan is." Like it's like a hopeful mid sentence.
Yeah, it's like taking everything in stride, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, they promised us the Gestapo when they dropped Roger off at that camp. They said, "If you try and escape again, you're a dead man." Little did he know, he brought 49 other men down with him. Not like in a judgmental way, but just yeah. When they said it at the beginning of the movie. But yeah, I think for me in my holy moment, I mean, it's the scene that I glazed. I was enthralled with the tension they were able to bring to the table. Because again, up until that point, I loved it. It was fun. It was fun. I love watching dudes be dudes digging tunnels. It was great. It was a lot of fun. But in that scene, just the meticulous of getting them in the tunnel, trying to get them out, the stress of Danny escaping, and then finding out they're 20 feet short. I have not been so stressed in a scene in a long time. And so just the ability to capture that stress in the escape scene, just 10 out of 10. I loved it. I think I've been seeing a lot of reels. Actually, fun fact, new segment of the podcast, me interjecting at the end of the movie or episode, realizing I forgot to say what genre this was for or category. This was a my dealer's choice wild pick. So it's just any movie I wanted to watch. And the reason I picked this is I see a ton of reels about it. And that's how it got spoiled. It's those AI reels where they just show the movie and then an AI voice saying like what they're doing, describing the scene.
I hate
But it really
those.
intrigued me.
But like
I get the hate but like I enjoy them as someone who also just kind of like my brother's the worst. My brother will just watch movies for the plot. Like literally, was like Google the plot of a movie and not watch it. I like watching movies, obviously, but sometimes it is fun just to, like watch a cool scene and then like them just say what's going on in the scene. But that's for a different point.
I don't know, but like that voice that they use, it sounds like Cleveland Brown, you know?
Yeah, it used to annoy me, but now it's like I become desensitized to it. The cool thing, again, like this is not a place to. We can talk about our thoughts on AI if you guys want us to, but I will say is kind of a good thought was they're starting to do scenes with famous people like Sylvester Stallone, and then having the AI use his voice to make you think it's an internal narrative, like you think it's part of the movie. Where Sylvester Stallone is like, "Yeah, this is me in prison. This is how I escaped," and they do it well enough to where you think it's the scene, the actual scene. At least that's what I thought it was. But anyways, that's besides the point. The point is, I picked this movie because I saw reels for it and it looked like it was fun. But I've never seen a reel talking about the actual escape and the tension. And I just think that's a shame because it's my favorite scene. So I'm gonna make a reel.
It is a great moment for sure. That is the greatest thing. I think you find reels online. It's like, okay, this makes me want to watch this property. That's how I am with. I've been seeing Dexter clips. I want to
Oh
see
yeah.
with Officer Dokes. And just every clip I see is like he's very funny, and so I'll leave it at that.
I know Dexter's somewhat of a comedy, but I can't. I used to get those clips, but I can't do serial killers. They freak me out. I'm getting a lot of clips for Gumball, The Amazing World of Gumball, and The Middle, and I've been watching a lot of those, like whole episodes of Gumball.
Gumball's great. I
I
haven't
need
seen
to
all
watch
of
it.
it, but
Me neither, just reels. But yeah, I mean, all of our audience, the thousands of people that watch us, it's because of our reels. The dedicated 4 people that watch every episode, those are our real fans. So thanks to you.
for sure, engage with us. Email us at theholymomentpodcast@gmail.com. Comment on our TikToks, our Instagram reels, our YouTube shorts, our Spotify episodes, and YouTube episodes. We want to hear your beautiful thoughts.
Specifically, email us what you would chase chocolate milk with. And give us the worst answer. What is the worst thing you could chase down chocolate milk with? I look forward to your comments. That being said, Jeffrey, I believe next week we get to watch one of your movies. We have nah. Okay, you've had one movie. You're on a high, man. You started with Little Woman. That was a 4 out of 5 for me. I'm curious to see if you can continue picking good movies.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening here. If I can get a drum roll.
I will give you a drum roll, but before I give you a drum roll, because we promised ourselves we would do it, I'm going to give a quick rundown of our categories. Again, to those who are new to the podcast, we choose 6 categories. There's 2 of us, so that's 12 movies in total. 12 movies, that's once a week, that's 4 weeks, that's 3 months, that's a whole season. These categories this season are wild card, Pick whatever heck freaking movie you want. Second category, Vega's pick. We used to have a co-host. His name was Vega. He's gone now, but he picks a movie for us once a season. Third one is, what would my co-host like? What would Jeffrey like? What would Nathaniel like? Who knows? Not me. Fourth is about our hobbies, so something to do with our personal hobbies. Fifth is movie crush, so star you had a crush on or character. And sixth is coming of age, so any coming of age movie. All right, Jeffrey, here's your drum roll. Drum, 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 makes a drum noise.
All right, and we are watching...
Not Dougal.
We are watching Dougal, folks.
Oh, I hate my life. No. Jeffrey went from S tier Little Women to F tier Dougal.
Well, I don't know, but yeah, it is definitely actually.
Tell the fans about Dougal, then get me the frick out of here.
Yeah, so Dougal is Vega's choice, and it's Vega's choice for me because we actually share this movie as a memory. Actually, we weren't together. It's not like we had a shared memory. But when he was a kid, he watched this movie, Dougal. When I was a kid, I watched this movie, Dougal, and I remembered really enjoying it. It's where I first heard the song, "Hey, hey, hey, it's magic, you know." And so I'll forever associate that song with Dougal. Apparently, the movie sucks. And so I guess we'll watch it, and I'll figure out if I was a stupid little child for liking this movie, or if in fact it actually sucks. And I'm afraid I already know the answer.
Oh, man. Every season we need a Super Baby Geniuses too. And this season we have Dougal. This is the time of the podcast where I usually tell you to go watch the movie so you can join us next week for the review. But maybe don't. Maybe don't go watch that movie and just join us for a good time. Maybe that's the episode
It can't be
where I
that
drink.
long.
I'm sure it's like an hour 20.
Yeah.
It's like a 3-hour long movie. I'd shoot myself. I'd say, no, sir. Cancel the podcast.
That would be so funny.
I just mostly want to watch it and see if it's super Uncanny Valley animation. Because it's like it's like the early 2000s animation where they were figuring stuff out. And like when we watched it as kids, we're like, yeah, this is normal. And you watch it as an adult, you're like, dear goodness, this is horrifying. Who allowed me to watch this?
Fortunately, I think that most of the characters aren't human. And so that's going to lessen the likelihood of uncanny valleyness, right? We're not approximating anything particularly real, and it's very stylized, but we'll see.
I guess we'll find out. Well, hey, folks, join us next week on the Holy Moment podcast for Nightmares for All as we review Dougal. But thank you for coming along. As always, I leave a little bit of advice. I just feel like if you're 30 feet underground and it's really cool, like it's earth, it's moist, it's soft, and it's kind of a cool breeze, I feel like that would be a good place to enjoy a Hot Pocket. So, if you ever want a Hot Pocket, go dig a tunnel underground. Until next time, get some rest, get some sleep, go watch Dougal. Bye.
Hot Pocket in a cave, that actually does kind of go hard, it sounds like.